life from the dead began through him, and he is, therefore, justly called the Lord of all. Jesus spoke with authority about God's love for us and the reason he created us. He said he has a plan for our lives, and that plan centers on a relationship with him. But for that relationship to be possible, Jesus had to die on the cross for our sins, and it was necessary for him to rise from the dead so that we too could have life after death. As the Creator, Jesus certainly would have power over life and death, and those closest to him claim they saw him alive after he died and was buried for 3 days. If they were wrong, then Christianity's been founded upon a lie. But if they were right, such a miracle would substantiate all Jesus said about God, himself, and us. But must we take the resurrection of Jesus Christ by faith alone, or is there solid historical evidence? Several skeptics began investigations into the historical record to prove the resurrection account false. What did they discover? Let me invite you to click on the link below to take a closer look at the evidence for the most fantastic claim ever made, the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead.
Waste and just throw it at the sun. Why don't we do that? Hey Earthlings, welcome to D News. I'm Trace. Nuclear waste is a rough topic. It's part of the reason people are opposed to nuclear power. We're getting electricity today, sure, but we're creating something which could pollute for centuries. People ain't on board with that. We got a question on our Facebook page from Cody Vincent asking exactly what I've been wondering since that crappy Superman Quest for Peace movie. He wants to know if we can launch nuclear waste into the sun. I love this idea, Cody. Seriously, thank you for asking. The sun's life-giving heat and light are the result of a constant nuclear fusion reaction. If we were able to safely send the nuclear material toward the sun, it would burn up. Honestly, it would never even come close to the sun. It would burn up long before it got there, but that's not the point. Can we shoot it at the sun? Sure. Will we? No. When you picture nuclear waste, you probably think of The Simpsons and picture glowing rods or bubbling green goop. But nuclear waste is actually an umbrella term for a bunch of different things. Sure, actual nuclear rods, but also clothing and tools used in radioactive areas, and even spare parts exposed to the radiation. Of that, only 3% is high-level radioactive material, and that's the only bit we'd be launching. In 1999, the Space Studies Institute looked at the space disposal of high-level material. According to their assessment, by 2020, there will be over 77,000 pounds of spent nuclear fuel rods alone on Earth. Space access is expensive at thousands of dollars a pound, so it's a bit prohibitive cost-wise. Even if money were no object, space technology has only existed for a little while, and it's not perfect. NASA's missions do fail occasionally. Go search for the orbiting Carbon Observatory. It crashed into the ocean like 17 minutes after takeoff. That's real crappy if it's a satellite. It's horrendous if it's high-level nuclear material. And so far, we haven't even scratched the surface of the problems with this idea, which makes me kind of sad because I was excited about it. Not only would we have to get into space safely, we'd have to cancel the orbital velocity of the Earth. Earth is moving real fast, you guys, and though the sun is big, it's not so big that we couldn't miss if we shot at it. The amount of energy that it would take to cancel out Earth's orbital velocity and then aim for the sun would be astronomically high. We'd be better off using the rocket engines to kill it with fire once we got it into space. Maybe if we had a Superman who could safely transport nuclear material directly to the sun, sure, maybe. But how much do you trust a guy with underwear on the outside of his pants? How do you feel about this? Betrayed? Relieved? Explore your thoughts in the comments just down here, and make sure that you subscribe for all your science therapy. We will see you next time on D News.
Top U.S. scientists say we should stop worrying about renewable energy and start doubling down on nuclear power. But where is all that waste going to go? Anthony here for D-News, and the open letter posted by 4 researchers on Google Plus says renewable energy is cool, but if we really want to stop climate change issues, we have to invest big in nuclear energy. Of course, that might sound like trading one bad for another. Climate change is a huge
But brother, support good, my friend.
Extremely hazardous to the environment, and while we can contain and store it, there's never really been a way to just be rid of it. Nuclear plants use uranium pellets sealed in metal rods for fuel, and after they get all the usable uranium from the rod, they're left with what's called high-level waste. It's a liquid that really only makes up a tiny fraction of the world's nuclear waste, but 95% of its total radioactivity. So the waste from the rods is usually sealed in these tanks and then encapsulated in concrete and stored deep in the ground in special facilities, though in the beginning we just sort of threw it into the sea, which is no longer considered cool, because that is how you get a kaiju. Anyway, all this stuff is sloshing around and is hazardous for anywhere from 10,000 to about 1 million years, depending on what source you go to. And the issue there is all your steel and concrete is gonna start falling apart before the waste is safe. You can get leakage out of storage and into the soil or groundwater. It also takes up a lot of space. Over the last few decades, a new process has become popular. It's called vitrification, and this is where we mix the waste with sugar and put it into a heated rotating tube and then turn it into glass. It's still radioactive, but it's way easier to handle and store than liquid waste, and it also takes up a lot less space because it winds up boiling down all the water volume, and it doesn't need to be surrounded with concrete when it's buried. The problem is that the process is crazy expensive, but researchers at the University of Sheffield think they know a way to simplify the vitrification process. They've figured out a way to use slag from blast furnaces. It's basically the waste products from refining metal ore instead of sugar. So we would be using waste to get rid of waste. And apparently it works so well in tests that it gets rid of up to 90% of the volume of the waste, meaning we use much less space to store the stuff, so we're not close to running out of room to keep it in. Still, it'd be great to see renewables and superconductors become more efficient alongside advances like this, because if the longer estimates are right and we've got to worry about nuclear waste for a few 100,000 years, it's hard to imagine not running out of places to store it, no matter how much you crush it down. I don't know, what do you think? Should we be putting more work into nuclear power or into things like wind and solar? If SimCity has taught me anything, it's that this solar thing is going to pay off right before a tornado destroys everyone. Let me know down below and subscribe for more D-News.
Seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, what are you waiting for?
You guys, humanity is another step closer to harnessing the nuclear powers of the sun. Hey guys, Trace here for D-News with some engineering and physics that might change the world. A lot of time we get you on here and we talk to you about those things. They're more conceptual and sometimes really complicated and kind of jargony. But this, oh man, this is juicy. This week, scientists announced they've produced mini suns. Seriously, for real this time. I know, they've been saying, give us 30 more years and we'll have it. They might have been closer than they thought. We are close to solving the mystery of fusion power that keeps the sun going. While nuclear fission gets a bad rap, nuclear fusion is completely different. It's one of the holy grails of science. Fusion offers a near-limitless, solution-free cheap source of energy. Deuterium to power the reaction, harnessed from seawater. And its waste is the super rare helium-3 or helium-4, or perhaps more deuterium. Plus, ideally, hundreds of times more energy than we put in. The best part? We get all of this with no more radiation than we're exposed to in an average day. Fission involves using heat and pressure to split an isotopic uranium. Fusion involves combining 2 atoms into one. Both release huge amounts of energy, but the whole fusion thing, so much more efficient. The National Ignition Facility has used 192 laser beams to create an X-ray pocket inside of a 77-ton machine. The pocket superheats the hydrogen deuterium fuel and excites the particles. As hydrogen has a positive charge, atoms normally repel each other. But inside that pocket, as the small piece of fuel burns at 100 million Kelvin, they move so fast they slam into each other, fusing and creating new atoms, releasing massive amounts of energy in the process. This is amazing stuff. While these scientists have confirmed that they can create this reaction for a microsecond, they can't sustain it. And without sustaining it, they won't be able to use it to create electricity. They say we haven't perfected that little pellet of deuterium fuel. It's microscopically uneven, and those imperfections cause it to burn up too quickly. But never mind that. Even though we're not sure how it works, the EU, the US, China, India, South Korea, and Russia are all funding a single fusion plant in France, separately from the NIF. It's a different design, but here's to hoping one of them gets this to work, because I could use some cheap, clean energy right about now. So there's one tiny little thing that I probably should point out. Scientists are saying that we are about 30 years from flipping the switch on a power plant, so there's that. But hey, let's be optimistic, right? Guys? Guys? Are you on board with this fusion power thing, or should we just forget it and stick only to renewables and other proven technologies? Let us know your power thoughts in the comments, and be sure you subscribe for more D-News.
You favor me, friend. There can be no doubt.
What if Mars astronauts get infected by some kind of crazy Martian disease? Do we just leave them out there? Hey Spacefarers, Trace here with our weekly D-News Space Update. I know it sounds like a science fiction horror film, but seriously, pathogens may exist on Mars that could potentially infect visiting humans. It's possible. Back in the 1960s, NASA was worried that astronauts from Apollo 11 may have unknowingly picked up some kind of alien bacteria while traipsing around on the moon, and in response they rescued them from their splashdown, put them in special isolation suits, and then into a quarantine trailer for weeks until they were completely cleared and safe. NASA has long been concerned about bacterial contamination of their spaced-out humans, checking them before their flights and then rechecking them after. Not only do we want to avoid some kind of alien super plague, that would be really bad, but contamination of alien worlds with Earth bacteria could really screw things up out there. To protect us from messing up each other's planets is NASA's Planetary Protection Office, but still, sometimes bad things happen. Astronauts going to Mars will spend months and maybe even years exposed to only each other. Because of this limited environment, the bacteria living in their digestive tract, nasal passages, and upper airways will mutate, and their body's immune system will slowly weaken. One infection of concern is Staphylococcus. It's commonly found during sweeps of the International Space Station already. This little guy can become MRSA, an unfortunately common infection fought in hospitals, prisons, and nursing homes, places where immune systems are weaker. Once humans show up on the Red Planet, they would instantly contaminate any of their equipment with bacteria. We just can't help it. They're everywhere. The mere presence of humans would cause a bacterial infestation, and Mars's environment would be akin to a trial by fire for an invasive species. Bacteria on a contaminated rover, for example, could infect areas of Mars suitable for Earth life. Then, without competition from other strains, that area would become a petri dish for mutated superbugs. So what's the plan to protect NASA's astronauts from getting up there and becoming infected? Beforehand, we could irradiate their foods to kill bacteria. They do that already. But the effect of long-term ingestion of microorganism-free food on our gut bacteria isn't really clear. While on Mars, NASA has set up already human restriction zones where a robot will have to check the area before one of us meatbags can visit. But even with restrictions, inevitably, someone's gonna get sick. In the case of illness, according to the Planetary Protection Office, one crew member will have the responsibility to implement planetary protection protocol and will determine how to act. NASA will monitor the health of their men and women, and hopefully the infection can be treated with the equipment they've brought during that 20 million mile trip. If not, well, then we're not sure what's going to happen. It's kind of scary. We can't have a, quote, horribly infectious, horribly damaging organism brought back to Earth from Mars. Though the way I see it, if they catch some kind of Martian flu, maybe they can just go live with those Mars One crazies and never come back. What do you think? Were you worried about space infection? Are you now? Tell us in the comments below, and find us on social media so we can be friends. See you next time on D-News.
Stephen Hawking says humans won't survive another 1,000 years if we don't escape the Earth, which sounded really scary until I remembered that I'll be dead by then. Hey everyone, Lacey Green here for D-News. At the Cedars-Sinai Regenerative Medicine Institute, one of the world's greatest and most respected astrophysicists of all time said that humanity is screwed. We're destroying our habitat, aka Earth, and he worries that technology has given us too much power. The 1963 Cuban Missile Crisis, anyone? The world has already come dangerously close to an all-out nuclear war on a few different occasions. Not not cute. Today it's estimated there are over 20,000 nuclear weapons in about 9 countries. Of course, that'll be plenty to destroy the entire Earth several times over. And it's not just the blast or the radiation we have to worry about. Nuclear weapons emit particles into the atmosphere that make it impossible for vegetation to grow. The real question here is, why do we do this to ourselves? Come on, guys, get it together. Honking explains that our genetic code carries selfish and aggressive instincts that were a survival advantage in the past. So basically, the lesser evolved of us are kind of dangerous. Excuse me while I grab my surprise face. Hawking's solution to the problem is to spread out into space because, we need more planets to destroy. I'm sure the rest of the universe will be absolutely thrilled to greet humanity, the violent brat that takes without asking and doesn't learn from its mistakes. He predicts that we have 1,000 years to do this, which seems like a ton of time to 23-year-old me. Think back to 1013, we didn't even have light bulbs then. Printing press, radios, TVs, computers, even home delivery pizza. It was a whole different world, guys. In 3013, especially with the snowball effect of technology, the world will probably be even more unrecognizable, including maybe humans being spread out into space. The main barrier to space colonization right now is all the pending research, aka money, development, aka money, and making it widely accessible to people, aka money. Our closest neighbors to look into, of course, are the moon, maybe a ginormous space station just outside of Earth. Mars, Venus, and Mercury are our closest planetary neighbors depending on the time of year, and they each have their own pros and cons too. So with enough resources, we can more fully understand the conditions of these alternative habitats and how the human body could or couldn't function within them. Hawking advocated focusing resources on this sort of space exploration for the future, and maybe not the sort of exploration where we attempt to find other life forms because they could be hostile. Seriously, guys, what if those aliens we're looking for aren't that nice? Just saying. So Anthony, Trace, and I will be doing another live Google Hangout next week. That'll be on Tuesday, April 23rd, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific. So come hang out, check out the link below for more info, and I'll see you next time on D-News.
We just figured out what the favorite color of all life in the universe is. Kind of. Anthony here for D-News with your weekly space update. I know that's usually Trace's thing, but he is genuinely riding Space Mountain at Disney World right now. See? Even on his time off, he is all space, all the time. You've got to respect that. So what is up in space? Well, last week, the poor Kepler Space Telescope, severely broken, but hobbling on, answered the main question of its mission. How many stars in the galaxy have potentially habitable planets? The answer, based on its findings, is about 20%. So 1 in 5 stars here in the Milky Way have planets that are about the size of Earth with a temperature that can support life. Now, depending on the source, we estimate we've got between 100 and 400 billion stars here in our little corner of the universe. So that means 20 to 80 billion of those stars have Earth-like planets. Whoa. So let's get down to brass tacks. How do we know which of those have life? Well, it might be the color of its surface. So some of the first living things on Earth were bacteria that covered the planet's surface about 3 billion years ago. And long after all other life dies out, similar organisms will probably be the last ones standing. And those bacteria were purple. A new report by the Institute of Astrophysics of the Canary Islands wondered if you could find a way to detect that purple color from far off, say from one of our telescopes. So they ran some computer models of Earth-like planets, and they found out that if the microbes live on land or near the coast, they would add a signal in the total light reflected by the planets. If they lived in the ocean, though, we wouldn't be able to see it. Kepler wouldn't be able to see the signal at all. But we've got a new telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, going up in 2018, and it could detect those signals from a planet so long as the star that the planet orbits isn't too much brighter than it is from the telescope's point of view. So we know which planets are candidates, and in just a few years, we could find out which ones are supporting life. Cool week to take a vacation, Trace. Hey, who's got the over-under on how many of these exoplanets might actually have life on them? I'm gonna say 10%. Let me know what your guess is down below, and subscribe for more space news, and also because Trace says that he will bring back Mickey Mouse hats for everyone who does.
Kepler Space Telescope discovered something very strange in their suspicions that it could be a sign of alien intelligence.
Scientists aren't saying it's aliens, but come on, it's totally aliens. Hey everyone, Trace here for D-News with astronomer Aaron White from the California Academy of Sciences. Hi Aaron.
Hi Trace, how are you?
I'm good. Just excited about aliens. You've probably heard this week about a super weird discovery from the Kepler Space Telescope. There might be aliens around a distant star, KIC 8462852, or at least that's how it's being reported.
Yeah, there's a lot of excitement around this story, but we've got to keep ourselves grounded. Essentially, the Kepler Space Telescope has a specific mission. We're looking for planets around distant stars. Kepler has spotted something unusual, and that has been blown up by the media to huge proportions. We're not saying it's aliens, but maybe aliens.
Let me reiterate, astronomers are not saying it's aliens. They're just not ruling out aliens as a possibility, right?
So Kepler's mission is to look for transiting planets around other stars.
We've talked about these on news before. Kepler looks at a star, and if a planet passes between the star and our point of view, we'd see a dimming light. So think about it this way. Normal starlight, when the planet starts passing, slightly dim, more dim, slightly brighter, back to normal as the planet's moved away. That's predictable, it's regular, and it's easy to spot a planet that way.
Right, exactly. That's called a transit. It's an easy way to detect planets around other stars. Now just keep in mind, a normal run-of-the-mill giant planet like Jupiter, which, by the way, is about 122 times larger than the Earth, will only dim a star by about 1% when we see this transit. The crazy thing about this story is that KIC 8462852 is showing dips in the ballpark of 20%. That is insane.
So this could mean, right Aaron, that something huge is blocking the star's light. Over on Test Tube Plus, Dr. Ian O'Neill, astrophysicist, and I talked about how a sufficiently advanced civilization might build a Dyson sphere around a sun.
We're talking about Dyson spheres. Come on, Dyson spheres. So a Dyson sphere is essentially a huge collection of space-based solar panels that gathers up light from its host star, and it converts it into usable energy. Any civilization that could build one of these things would give them access to an enormous power source. But as a side effect, it would block the star's light from a distant nearest perspective, like maybe us.
So a Dyson sphere might explain the observations of KIC. If your goal was to show other civilizations of your existence, putting a beacon like a big artificial thing around your star would definitely do.
So what we're seeing could be explained by alien intelligence looking to make its presence known to other intelligent beings. But to be honest, it could also be a lot of other things.
Party pooper.
But that's why astronomers have always got to be careful about making any claims about aliens. Remember, aliens or not, this is still a pretty unprecedented finding. The real reason that we're even at this point of mentioning aliens is that so far the explanations for this huge dimming have come up pretty short.
Good old KICH4 or whatever it is. It's an F3 type star. It's on its main peak. Basically, this means that the star isn't too old, it isn't too young, it's a little hotter than our star, which tells us that any dust clouds left over from its formation or particles blown off to the end of the star's life are unlikely sources for this dimming we're seeing.
Absolutely. KIC, whatever, also rotates slightly faster than once per Earth day. This is way faster than the observed dips that we're seeing, meaning star spots, which are sunspots just on a star over there, on this star's surface cannot be responsible. One of the remaining guesses is that some sort of collision within the system left a debris cloud.
It could be asteroids impacting each other. It could be planets colliding. But even that doesn't fully explain this dimming factor. Normally, dust from collisions would heat up and then glow with infrared light, which we would then be able to detect using ground-based follow-up surveys. And they did not detect any IR. Aliens, Aaron? Yes.
Still unlikely. I'm sorry. Instead, the best explanation is actually comets. Yeah, comets. So it turns out that if comets are in a distant orbit around the star and they were recently perturbed and knocked into the system, they could have bashed together. They would leave an obscuring debris cloud that could explain what we're seeing. Comets are in wide orbits, so any debris would move in and out of our line of sight. It's possible that when they did these follow-up surveys looking for the IR emissions, they could have just missed that debris cloud and therefore wouldn't have seen the infrared left behind.
This is actually the most likely scientific solution that's been offered so far, but it would have to be a pretty incredible coincidence that out of the billions of years the star has yet to live, this event happened in the 4-year time span that Kepler was looking at it. Seriously, the odds are literally astronomical.
Yeah, astronomical.
It's important to stress here that all this talk of Dyson spheres and aliens, it's a far-flung idea, aka, as we sometimes say.
I hear that you have a saying.
Do you want to say it?
Oh, okay. More research is needed.
Remember, 20 years ago, we just detected the first batch of exoplanets, like ever. Exoplanet research is still in its infancy. The most likely solution is that there's some natural phenomenon that we haven't observed or we haven't thought of yet, and that's what we're seeing. Look, astronomers are not saying it's aliens, and they're not saying it's not aliens. It's more like they're saying it's not aliens, but we don't know what it is.
Yeah, so here's the thing, is that finding life beyond Earth is probably the biggest and most profound discovery that science could make. So we need to be absolutely sure that we exhaust every other possible explanation before we make that claim that aliens are responsible. So, whenever you ask an astronomer, is it aliens? They'll respond with, no, of course not. There's more plausible explanations. Don't even think about it. But there's always that little bit in the back of our minds that says, well, maybe.
What do you guys think about this discovery? Is the media blowing it out of proportion, or is this a conspiracy cover-up of X-Filian proportions? Luckily, scientists have explored the idea of what alien life might actually look like if we were to come across it. And Amy assuages those alien assumptions in this video here.
The arsenic became a